really appreciate. And yeah, this is Darkrooms Live on what you think, and we'll be going back to knowing um, which other nations could go the Sri Lanka way. So that's where we are right now. So here we have Pakistan. So Pakistan is the first we have on the list, and the country is facing a serious economic crisis in last year. Like Sri Lanka, Pakistan is indebted to heavy loans and investment from China, while Sri Lanka has defaulted on repayment and is already in a debt trap. The investment on the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPEC) are a close second. Pakistan has leased some of its big industrial projects to Chinese firms, which has led them to incur more debts. This is the same vicious cycle that Sri Lanka was caught in, and then it became impossible to escape debts. So for the nations, liking to always go after borrowing without thinking, what are we putting these funds into? Those are the critical things that need to be thought out. Are we putting this in, and making sure that this fund is going to be able to generate as much income as possible? That's to be able to service the loans. But if we borrow and your purpose of borrowing is just pay the salaries of politicians, then you're waiting for the doomsday. Just like what happened in Sri Lanka. What is also taking place in Sierra Leone. It's not just the loans alone. The the pandemic also had its impact, but then nations who don't put good use to resources or to loans like that would end up in such case. So the rise in cost of energy import means that the nation could face a balance of payment crisis. The country's foreign exchange reserves have dwindled to only $9.8 billion, just enough for 5 weeks worth of imports. According to a report on Reuters, petrol and diesel prices have skyrocketed, and Pakistan is reeling under a severe electricity crisis. Poor policy decisions, political unrest in the country, and external factors such as external debt, foreign exchange reserves, and inflation are responsible for the deepening economic crisis in Pakistan. So the second nation on the list is Nepal. The Himalayan nation is seeing a rise in imports, even as forex reserves deplete and there is a growing imbalance in the balance of payments. Prices of essential prices, food and fuel, have risen. Its annual retail inflation accelerated from 8.56% in June, the highest in 6 years. A rise in imports over the past few months has drained Nepal's foreign exchange reserves. According to Nepal's customs department, the country's total import bill ballooned from 1.7 trillion, Nepal currency in the first 11 months of the current fiscal year. The figure represents a staggering year-on-year jump of 27.5%, according to a report on Kathmandu Post. Nepal is facing a liquidity crunch, and as a result, banks and other financial institutions are struggling to extend loans to productive sectors like the agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, and energy sectors. Third is Egypt. With a debt to GDP ratio of about 95%, Egypt has experienced one of the largest outflows of foreign funds this year, totaling $11 billion. According to JP Morgan, Egypt is expected to have to pay $100 billion in hard currency debt over the next 5 years, including a sizable $3.3 billion bond in 2024, according to fund management company FIM Partners, reports Reuters. On Sunday, Egypt's government denied rumors that the country was facing shortage of food commodities because of the ongoing global food crisis. The nation has far exceeded its lending quota from the IMF, but entered a new accord with the agency, which disbursed loans of $20 billion. Wow. In May 2022, just May, yeah. And fourth nation on this list is Argentina. With global inflation rising and a fear of recession looming large, Argentina's economy is headed for trouble. In May, the country's inflation was at 58%. Wow. 58%. That's even above 54.6 of Sri Lanka's inflation rate. So, Argentinians are very, let's say, they're very cool, calm, and collected. Even in a world where prices are soaring almost everywhere, the South American nation remains an outlier, and things are not getting any better. Domestic inflation is heading towards 70% by the end of the year. Whoa. That's a serious thing. Argentina is an important global supplier of soybeans, corn, and wheat, but grain exports are falling in the second half of the year. This will make it difficult for the country to meet targets linked to a $44 billion deal agreed with the IMF. Wow. So there's been sprinkles of protests here and there in Argentina in July as well. I guess that has been calmed. Amid the growing economic worries, the country's finance minister, Martis Guzman, quit in early July after a split within the ruling Peronist coalition. Silvina Batakis, who replaced Guzman, vowed to stick to commitments made to the IMF. However, investors are worried about another sovereign debt default amid galloping inflation and poor public finances, according to the Financial Times. Okay, so another nation. So they were also witnessing protests in Argentina. So the next one after Argentina right now is Nigeria. Yeah, the one that really concerns me, Nigeria. The World Bank recently listed Nigeria amongst the top 10 countries in the world with the worst inflation rates. Based on 2021 figures, it ranked 8th on the list with an annual inflation rate of 16.95%, double digit there. So inflation, debts, and food crises are pushing the Nigerian economy to the brink of a collapse. Kristalina Georgieva, managing director of the IMF, said the prices of groceries, beverages, and provisions have more than doubled since last year. Africa's largest economy had total outstanding debt of $100 billion as of March 31st. According to the latest figures from the country's debt management office, external loans comprising of concessional and commercial debts stood at $40 billion, with a balance of $60 billion hold to domestic issuers, reports Bloomberg. Whoa. Wait. Let's recap that again. Africa's largest economy had total outstanding debt of $100 billion as of March 31st. $100 billion. Wow. According to the latest figures from the country's debt management office, external loans comprising concessional and commercial debt stood at $14 billion. So external loans are $40 billion, with a balance of $60 billion hold to domestic issuers, reports Bloomberg. And Nigeria is going to be borrowing, obviously. There's already debate of borrowing for ASU to settle ASU or not settle ASU, but that's by the side. So the unexplained government preference of Eurobonds at high interest cost with the associated exchange rate risk may likely hurt Nigeria sooner than anticipated. Said Robert Asogwa, a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Okay. And next on the list is Kenya. Well, Kenya is just having their election. They had their election. Kenya is among other African nations on the brink of economic crisis, according to a report released by Moody's Investor Service. A collapsing currency and depleted foreign exchange remain a major concern, according to David Rogovic, Vice President and Senior Analyst at Moody's. The quantity of debt owed compared to reserves and the fiscal difficulties Kenya is facing is managing debt loads makes it vulnerable. So Kenya has also protested high cost of food. So it's something that's going on everywhere. Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Nigerians are all grumbling too. Although no protests yet. Kenya was reported to be spending almost 30% of its income on interest payments, according to media reports. Since the country now lacks access to financing markets and has bonds worth over $500 million that mature in 2024, this situation is problematic, Reuters report said. Another country is Ethiopia. African governments owe 3 times as much debt to private creditors in the West as they do to China, according to a report by UK-based Debt Justice. Ethiopia faced a double pain returning its economy to pre-COVID GDP. After Ethiopia is Ghana. Ghana inflation soared to 29.82% in June 2022 for the first time in 18 years. From transportation to utilities like electricity and water, the price of all essentials have escalated in the West African country as it faces worsening economic conditions. The country's fiscal situation, which was affected by the pandemic, was worsened by Russia-Ukraine war. Last December, unemployment was at 13.4%. Wow. Well, that's still fair. Well, it's not fair considering their population. I'm only saying it's fair in terms of what the unemployment rate is in Nigeria, 3 times higher than 10 years ago. The economy is facing debt crisis because of excessive borrowing. Ghanaians have protested for days in June against the rising cost of living. The government has been able to negotiate an IMF bailout. Wow. The next on the list is Panama. Albania is also there, and Albania is the last. So, here we can see all the nations who find themselves in that borrowing trap, and hopefully they don't go the Sri Lanka way, because the Sri Lanka way is nothing funny. Where you have a president fleeing and forcefully resigning, and handing over to a prime minister who is probably not ready for the job and might as well be confused of what to do. So it's a confused state. But even the people are not ready to even talk about it because they don't trust any of those politicians, and that's where the problem will come from. Who would they now trust? Who would now lead? Because this choice of a leader is not coming from an election; it's coming from an opera. So you have different and dissenting opinions as to who should lead, and maybe they will have to force an election or something. But even having to do that will come at a cost at this point. So having an election will be at a cost, and I don't think they're willing to have any of such cost right now. So it's something to be conscious of for every other nation, that they need to be conscious of their borrowing. Too much borrowing with no good use of the money. If most of your money, the borrowed funds, are going into servicing the debts or paying the salaries of politicians, what is obtainable in some places in Africa, then it's just a doomsday ahead. So, but hopefully, everyone will see the right thing and know the right choices, and Nigerians can make the right choices come 2023, because there would be so many rosy promises coming from politicians, and they all want to just tell you how $1 would be $1 again. But if you believe it is at your own choice, we're all here, So on this note, I will be wrapping up the show for tonight, and I'm your host, DA. This is Darkrooms Live, and Darkrooms Live, what do you think is the show itself on Darkrooms Live? So I'm always up here on the live stream. You can join me on live stream, but to join me, you need to follow and like this page. You need to follow or like this page on any of the social media handle, or any of the social media platform you find yourself, be it Facebook, YouTube, You can follow and like this page, and we can be and you can get notified whenever we come on live, so you can join the conversation live and we can have the conversation interactively. And it's going to be open for call in once we're able to get the numbers. So help share, follow and like, and I will really do appreciate. So today is all about Sri Lanka. What went wrong? And all that went wrong with Sri Lanka is just too much borrowing with no good use, with no purpose, with no definite purpose. It's just borrowing for personal purpose. And then the COVID came, and the COVID was just a leveler. It just made all the lazy people, showed all of them what their weakness were, and all the strong guys, they know their weakness already, but they were able to adjust. And that's just what went wrong with Sri Lanka. And coupled with corruption and the government not being transparent and truthful to itself and realistic, they don't see days like this coming for them. And that's just what happened. So it's Darkrooms Live. What do you think? And I'm your host, DA. Remember to follow and like so that you can get notified whenever we come online, and you can join the conversation live, and we can have an interactive section where you can call in and I can get to hear your opinion as regards whatever the topic of the discussion, so we can get to collaborate, talk, listen to one and each other's perspective and propositions, and then we can know what, and discuss all of this and know what really went wrong. So that's just what the show is all about. So catch me up here live tomorrow again. I'll be live tomorrow. I hopefully believe we'll be having more sessions tomorrow and more time to talk as well. So I'm your host, DA. I sign out now. Thank you.